We'll call this special meeting of the Silver City Town Council to order. Please rise and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. If I could ask Councillor Moronis to read our mission statement.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Silver City is the hub of an inclusive community settled within a small town that, through guided growth, honors and preserves its historical, cultural, and natural heritage while facilitating jobs, health, and education resources such and protect the recreational opportunities of the area and high quality of life.
Thank you. The item on the agenda today is discussion only on issues relating to lodger's tax promotions. No action will be taken by the Town Council. Basically, this is informative. As I think all of you know, we took some steps last year to evaluate our process, and so now we've got a report back, and we want to go over that and then see if we can make some improvements to the process and reinforce what's gone on that's very good. And I also understand the Lodgers Tax Committee has some comments they want to make regarding the study. Did you have a chance to look at the study from Garrity Group? Good. Could I get somebody to work the projector for me? Thanks, Michelle. You can't hear. Is it coming through?
That one.
Well, the light's on. I hadn't even started mumbling yet. Ta-da.
Yes.
Can you hear me now? Ta-da. Alrighty. So basically what I did was I went through the Garrity report and I pulled out some of the highlights of it. They had gone through and interviewed, I believe, almost every applicant that had historically applied for lodger's tax, and in doing so they identified some key findings. So our objective today is going to be an overview of the report that was provided by the Garrity Group, and then also make some recommendations to staff so we can get the ball rolling. The outcomes will be to provide the council information to formulate staff guidance, reinforce the positives identified, make changes as identified, enhance the benefits received by the town in regards to lodger's tax, and then we need to determine how much funding should be allocated to events, how much, if any, funding shall be for overall advertising of the area.
Can you turn the lights down a little bit?
Just a little bit of background on the report and the history of lodger's tax. The lodger's tax was originally enacted in 1969. Towns and counties have the ability to impose and collect occupancy tax. The purpose of the tax was to redevelop the current lodger's tax funding application, develop a scoring system or grading sheet to objectively appropriate funds to qualified organizations and events, create a universal intake form to be used by event organizers to track room nights with hotel guests and/or restaurants during major events, other additional support for events occurring during the shoulder seasons, create a request for proposal to staff a convention and visitors bureau. That's an interesting one. Good.
My understanding was that the purpose, those were the recommendations, right? They're not the purpose.
They're both.
It's bizarre. There are some issues that I had with the way the report was put together as well.
I pulled this out of the report.
Excellent.
The project relationship to law and town goals. Mayor and council agreed on July 13, 2010 to examine lodgers tax process and benefit. Consensus was development of a plan with goals that are measurable, objectives, tactics to include promotion of Keystone events. And the Garrity Group was contracted to provide an analysis with recommendations. Some of their findings regarding the application are most applicants had no issues of concern with the application. One reported application to be overly time intensive and complicated. One applicant expressed concerns over the moving target for applications. It's hard to plan ahead. One applicant expressed positive impression of the application being more in form of grant application. More than one commented on the need for better understanding of what is and is not allowed under the fund. And that's been a continuing issue every year on what can we actually fund. Some of the historical funding issues were little in the form of measurable results. No data provided that measured if contractors' efforts were responsible for room data. So there's a whole lot of, the hotel was full over the weekend that we did our event, but no concrete proof to actually show that your event filled the hotel, was what they found. Former process was used to identify and rectify duplication, and that was reported by some of those involved formerly. Former chamber plan was to use 6 key taglines. So there was actually a plan that identified 6 factors that we focused on for regional advertising of what we offer in this area. The town council may not be well educated on the issues and may have allocated without understanding the full details. And I think this has actually been a significant issue, that we did not actually look at the proposals. We didn't look at the scoring from the committee. We looked at strictly a recommendation from the committee. And I think we probably have made some decisions based on less than complete knowledge. We did make some change last year in that all the council did review the proposals. Missing past budgets on spending. And then, is a past budget necessary? Should funding be held until compliance is gained? Need more effort to reach visitors without sole focus on events? There is a formula to demonstrate marketing value from events. Most uses have been within the intent of the law. There was one event that they had some question on whether it was actually compliant with the intent of the law in all the historical research that they did. Numerous comments on trying to determine if actual advertising was the cause of the increase in tourism, i.e. it's what we just talked about, whether your event actually filled the hotels. Referring back to the comprehensive plan, there's a focus in the plan on heritage tourism, museum, downtown, mining, cliff dwellings, etc., and recreational tourism, hunting, fishing, birding, wildlife, hiking, camping, etc. Both are relevant tourism markets today per a New Mexico Department of Tourism study. 54% of people recalled seeing advertising promoting travel within New Mexico. Silver City, not in the top 5 New Mexico destinations. However, 27% reported that they had visited the cliff dwellings. According to the New Mexico Tourism Study, the top 10 tourism activities were shopping, visiting friends and relatives, driving scenic byways, nightlife, special events, state parks, national monuments, camping, observing wildlife, casino, gambling, hiking, and biking. Looks like we have about 7 of those, and I don't know, some may even argue that nightlife anymore might be covered in Silver City. Some of the top 10 tourism activities, as 7 of the 10 of these activities align with tourist amenities Silver City offers, this list may be a good guide in determining funding priorities. Previous years' awards align with the goals of attracting tourists to experience the wealth of historical and recreational amenities Silver City has to offer. past activities, because some of our past activities actually did hit the mark. So top 7 for all visitors was the scenic beauty, Native American culture, historic sites, outdoor recreation, Hispanic culture, and special events. Some of the history that other municipalities, and there was quite a bit of comment in the study, as well as I've made some effort to talk to some of the other communities. Silver City does compare with other municipalities in this report that shows most have seen decrease in lodger's tax since 2008. I didn't find one that could show an increase. I mean, we've seen some increase that is, this graph has kind of gone up and down over the years. One of the other issues is the scoring. Angel Fire has a scoring sheet to determine how well the application meets the criteria, and it's a pretty intense scoring sheet. Las Vegas, New Mexico has extensive process for pre and post application. Several have similar process as Silver City with an advisory board, and I could tell you several, when I blindsided them with the questions on lodger's tax, they didn't have a clue what their process was, what the evaluation process was. It was kind of left up to staff and an advisory board. So I thought that was interesting that it's been such a topic with our council when many other local governments around the state just kind of let it happen. Some of the next steps were based on the research and analysis. The Garrity Group submits the following recommendations to the Lodgers Tax Advisory Board and Silver City Town Council. Redevelop the current Lodgers Tax funding application to reflect the following. Require applicants to include their organization's New Mexico CRS number. Require applicants to include a Town of Silver City logo on all collateral and promotional material, which we do already. Require applicants to provide an exit interview as a condition to receiving final payment. Require applicants to document desired measurements and results. Require applicants to provide a private sector financial match for the amount of funding being sought and awarded. Identify minimum requirements for applicants. Deny funding to any organization not meeting minimum requirements. And these are their recommendations, not mine. New Mexico-based organization registered with a government entity in the state of New Mexico, that they have matching funds, that there be a regional presence in Grant County. Develop a scoring system or grading sheet to objectively appropriate funds to qualified organizations and events. Award points for events scheduled during the shoulder season. Create a universal intake form to be used by event organizers to track room nights with hotel guests and or restaurants during major events. Coordinate this effort with the form currently being utilized by the hotels. Ask hotels to report percent of travelers that are lodging for business versus pleasure. Data can be used to document economic impacts. Data can establish occupancy benchmarks to better judge the impact of special events. Data can identify and track shoulder season activity. Offer additional support for events occurring during the shoulder season. And then the last one I just added is set a firm calendar for awarding lodger's tax every year. Create a request for proposals to staff a convention and visitors bureau. Allocate 75% of lodger's tax funding. Require organizational applicant funding match. Require experienced staging tourism visitor events. Require the organization's focus to be on tourism and visitors activities. And in conclusion, we have historically done well. We have seen the highs and lows as other communities have. We have some opportunity to refine the application, qualifications, guidance, process, and review. We need to provide our guidance to the staff to make sure that we're accomplishing these things. The dates for the awards, and that's all been a real issue, and it's been getting worse, I think, in the last few years, that we're not consistent, allowing all of you that are trying to do marketing and meet contracts. Our awards are getting later and later, and sometimes it's beyond the contract period that you're allowed. And it also creates an issue when you're having to print and we're requiring that you put our logo on documents, but we haven't guaranteed you any funding as of that point. So we really need to set a firm date. How much to reserve for area advertising, as in the whole area? When you look at some of the high tourism targets for New Mexico tourists, they're the cliff dwellings, the stuff like that are forest. They're not necessarily in Silver City. How much to reserve, or how much for fulfillment? How much for events? What are the measurable goals and how are they measured? Agency and key members in good standing with the town and incorporation? How does council ensure we are making informed decisions? And then any other issues that may come up. And those are my kids. And if you notice, my daughter is actually sitting on my grandson. So he's down there helping. So at this point, Senator, did you want to address any of these points now?
I'm afraid that they're sort of scattered in my opinions, but
That's perfectly fine.
I will be glad to. I'm not sure that I can.
Yes, I was making notes as I was going through, so. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? No, it's probably not on, right?
It's on.
No, it's on.
I need to, that's unusual for me. Usually I speak too loud. So my notes are a little scattered, and I apologize for that. One of the first things that I wanted to say is that we received an email this morning. I wanted to highly encourage that we only support nonprofits and that businesses do not become part of this application process. I think we have enough nonprofits doing things for Silver City that we don't need to add that extra of businesses also looking for largest tax. That was my first thing. My second thing is my overall philosophy on being on the largest tax, what I call advisory board, is that events are very good. Events are great, but I keep preaching, and those are always measured by heads and beds. But I keep preaching that if we had 5 events with 3 nights of total occupancy, and I don't know how many rooms we have in Silver City, I apologize for that, but say we have 300, it doesn't really matter. If we have 5 3-night events and everybody's full, that gives us 4,500 room nights, which is what lodging people measure. If we instead have an attractive place to come between March and October, the other months are a little harder, and we get 50% occupancy, which for the lodging industry is about the norm. That's 8 months, that's 240 days, and we get 50% occupancy, we then get 36,000 room nights. So I constantly am saying that we need to be looking at things that make the visitors visit here more interesting, so they go back and they talk about Silver City. Okay. So I think we need to be careful that we don't just look at events, and that was one of the problems I had with with some of the recommendations, is they very much focused on events and what events could do. You can measure to a certain extent how events affect you. Then I also wanted to talk, there was a table that they had done that showed our various awards and whether they'd been heritage cultural or they'd been outdoors. The majority of them were heritage cultural, but I have to say I think we've only scratched the surface on what we have to offer as far as heritage and cultural things. I mean, the Wild West is still very much not being promoted here. The whole idea of cowboys and Indians, which people love to come and learn about. Mining is still very much untouched and not particularly well developed and shown for what it can do and what people love to come to see mines. So one of my concerns was there was too much emphasis from the report on the recommendations on events. Now I like the idea of having a criteria list. That would be really helpful. I have to say that probably if you polled my board members, we all sort of had a criteria list. I mean, it wasn't formal, it wasn't, points, but we would talk about specific things. So I think we were using that to a particular we were using that already. I particularly liked the County of Los Alamos. They had their request for proposal, and their mission, which I thought very much suited us, was that the mission of the county's visitor promotion program is to strengthen the county's economy by promoting Los Alamos County as a preferred year-round travel destination with particular emphasis on increasing weekend visitation while respecting the county's unique and diverse ecosystems, environments, lifestyles, and cultures. And I thought that was sort of what we were looking for, too. I thought that was very good. They also had a criteria list that I thought was broad enough. I mean, my problem with a criteria list, it just counts heads and beds, is there are other things that people do that bring people here, but you can't count it. And so I think there should be a broad enough criteria list to cover both what events do and also what other activities might do for us. And then on the specific recommendations, I wasn't sure what it meant to require applicants to provide an exit interview before getting paid. Is that the applicant comes and is interviewed by someone? I didn't know what that meant, and who would that someone be? And what questions would they be asking? There also was a requirement to provide a match. And I know from previous lives of applying for grants, when there is a match, that is really tough. That really makes it tough on people to have a match. I understand why we want that, but I think that's a really tough thing to require. You might encourage it, you might look for it, but I don't think you should require it. And then the whole thing about creating the universal intake form for the hotels, I question whether that's doable, but perhaps it is. And then 75% of that Lodgers tax to go to a visitor center, I think is a little high. That would be my comment. And I'm really concerned, I'm glad to note that you put up advertising. I'm really concerned that Silver City is not being seen out there anymore, that people aren't just being aware of Silver City. I noticed in the last issue of New Mexico Magazine that Deming had 2 ads, Lordsburg had 1, and the only Silver City one was the Blues Fest. But there was no Silver City in general ad in the New Mexico Magazine, and I was concerned about that. I think that's what let me just check my notes here. I think that was most of the things that I had to comment. Any questions on what I've said? Did I make myself clear? Yes, okay, thank you.
Questions? Jonah?
I'm Michelle Carrillo, and I'm here today on behalf of the Holiday Inn Express and their owners, Lanny and Jill Olson. We overviewed the same report, and our main concern is the intake forms at the hotels and what's the feasibility of actually performing this. Depending on the type of individual you've got at the front desk, and I mean the customer coming in, the guests themselves, a lot of times you're going to be presented with, it's none of your business, can I have my room key and go to my room? I don't have time to fill out a survey, I've just traveled 5 hours in a car, 3 hours on a plane, I want to go to my room. It's just the type of customers that we have at our hotel, and I'm not saying that every establishment in Grant County is the same, but you're looking at some of the larger businesses, the 60, 70 room hotels, right now are being filled, like ourselves, 100% occupied Monday through Thursday at least, with Freeport, McMoran, Gila Regional, things of this nature. And then when it comes to the weekends, you've got a lot of individuals. Take this last weekend with Tour de Gila. We had individuals walk in and say, what is there to do in this town? They had no clue there was a bicycle race going on, and they were quite happy and excited to actually have events going on downtown, to have the stores open, the galleries and such. So I agree with the fact that advertising in general needs to be done. The events are well promoted, and I am glad that we can support that. At the same time, we need to look at having, like the tourism committee that we used to have at the chamber, something put together that we know what we need in our community. If we're looking at an outside advertising firm or marketing firm of any point, what does somebody in Albuquerque know about Grand County? besides having to come down here and gather the information from us ourselves, why can't we put our heads together and work ourselves rather than spending half of our budget on a marketing firm, things of that nature? So there's just some concerns that we bring up. Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle. Anybody else on the committee? Any questions from the council? I think we need to start kind of with it's kind of the elephant in the room is the visitor center question. I've got the same concerns that Sandra brought up. I mean, 75% of the budget to visitor center when you're only looking at a $200,000 budget is huge. And I don't know if we have that resource even available at this point. Do you? Having a formal visitors tourist center, you know, we've had the discussions with the county on the county admin building and on those topics. To commit 75% of our, I mean, I know we have the chamber that does the fulfillment activities and the Green Chamber in partnership with them in staffing. But what would 75% of the budget do?
I don't know, because choosing the organization that would be doing it, of course, or whoever would be staffing it, even if we were staffing it, I mean, that would take a lot of the largest tax dollars to salaries and doing things like that. So, I mean, you know, I think it would be good to use an organization that's already existing and subsidize them to do that job. But do you really need 75% of the total lodger's tax dollars, or subsidize what they're already doing to accomplish that type of activity?
I mean, it is an RFP, so we could get a proposal. And it would be interesting to see if we got a proposal of that magnitude. I mean, we're not going to limit it, but I would have some strong concerns about putting that much money into it. Councilor?
Mayor, I was going to say that part of the problem is the recommendation states to staff, and it doesn't say anything about all the promotional things that we need to do that Sandra's brought up, and that, I mean, you can see that I said that we need to, in the report, that we need to have a holistic viewpoint on how we do this. We have to encompass everything, and we have to look all year round. We can do events, but we can't just focus on events. But 75% is really high, and is there any? You said there's been some discussions with the county. Is there any thought that the county and the city together could do something or put out a joint RFP that would not just staff but also do the promotional side that we're talking about in terms of area advertising, you know, around the year about this being a destination, and that there's a lot of things to do here, and there's events that go within that calendar.
Personally, I think we need to make sure we got our act together before we bring in a partner.
Well, I agree, but I think sometimes in order to leverage money, that you may have to bring in a partner while you're getting your act together so everybody can get their act together at the same time.
Well, and I think that's what the mayor's saying, is that we can bring in an organization that our funds are leveraging what they're already doing. For instance, based on what the proposed budget for allocation this year is $225,000, that would mean 168,000 of that would go towards the visitors and conference, and only 50-some thousand would go towards promotions of the events and or whatever, however it's split up from there for the remaining.
Mitch?
Good morning. Since we are talking about the visitor center, and as we all know, there have been changes there since the last recommendation of the Lodgers Tax Advisory Board and the subsequent decision by the town council as to how much money to be awarded to the Chamber of Commerce. Is it possible now, and would now be a good time to hear a summary as to how the visitor center has been handled and how fulfillment has been handled in that time after these decisions were made, and perhaps maybe somebody can even address the issue as to what the expenditures have been since this change was made, which might give us an idea as to, how much money it really does take to run the thing, how small of a shoestring we can run the thing on. And that may also affect the decision and affect that 75% figure, or need a more realistic estimate as to how much it really costs to run it. I know that Lowell was here this morning, and I saw Sissy back there too as well. It's up to you, but I think now might be a good time for somebody to give us just a brief summary as to where we're at since last September.
Agree?
Yes.
Just one quick comment, just to maybe even start that off, is historically, we have the facilities for a visitor center. It's already there. It's in place. It has been manned to a certain extent. And from what I can gather, it's never cost. We've never awarded close to 75% to do so. We've been doing it for much less than 75% already.
Yeah, and I think part of the issue with this in the study is the conference center that the county owns, and tying the visitors funding, Lodgers tax funding, into how do we make better use of that facility, because there's thousands of square feet that we could be using to fill every week. So I think that's where he was headed with that discussion. But did you want to talk about the fulfillment stuff before I open it to the lower?
Yeah, basically what we did this year was we met with the visitor center, and we got together to figure out what activities they do that actually the normal chamber activities that cross over into fulfillment type activities. And then we got their total budget, and we came up with, I believe it was $44,000 that I contracted with the Chamber of Commerce to do fulfillment for staffing time, for the operations, and for supplies, right? And technology to keep the website up, those types of things. So that's what we've done for this year for fulfillment, along with a creative partnership with the Green Chamber of Commerce to keep the chamber open during the weekends for visitors as they came in.
Lola, do you want to address how that's working, and what, if you think the fulfillment is going to be bigger demand this coming year, or?
I apologize for not coming prepared with the data, but looking at our budget recently with the board, we're going to be about $14,000 over what our contract services is with the town. We run about $11,000 to $12,000 a month, our budget, and about $5,000 of that is our costs for running the chamber. The other $6,000 is for tourism. And if you want statistics, we are keeping all the stats, of course. What I have is through June 30th of last year with me. I didn't bring any stats for this fiscal year.
Yeah. I'd like you to address exactly what fulfillment is. I want to make sure that we have a full understanding, because I absolutely do not think we did.
Okay, fulfillment. We're, as far as the Tourism Association of New Mexico defines a Chamber of Commerce, we are a destination marketing organization. We are contacted by telephone, website, walk-ins. We get leads from ads that are placed in magazines. We could get, I get probably 900 emails a week, and 90% of that is related to tourism questions. Let's see, is Sissy here? If she wants any comments. They staff the center on Saturdays, I believe, from 10 to 2. Okay. And part of fulfillment in the past, before, last year, things that weren't brought into consideration that I've learned being on a couple of tourism-related boards, the tourism committee was a volunteer committee who did all the ad placement. And let's say a city like Hobbs, the town would do a contract with that city for maybe $50,000 or $60,000 just to manage the ad placement. So the tourism committee was saving money out of lodger's tax by doing that ad placement. Billboards are also, part of fulfillment. Our website's on there. We have updated them. They do have the logos for tourism and for the town and for the county. See, and I'm kind of all over the place because I'm unprepared. Let's see, another part of fulfillment could be, for example, being on the TANM board or attending Region 2 meetings or WIA or the Chamber Executive Board. You go there with doing information exchange, how to do it better. And so there's always a contact, bring a meeting to Silver City. We have done some convention and visitor bureau stuff on a very small level. We've brought 3 board meetings to town. And we did bid with the university on bringing a couple of TANM conferences here. So we're just stepping into that arena.
So there's obviously the cost of keeping the telephone turned on, the website up and maintained, and
postage,
your email account. Mm-hmm. That's where I'm headed. Is okay. What is, by us answering our telephone, responding to the web, responding to the emails, responding to the walk-ins, what cost does that generate?
I don't know the exact cost, Mayor, but I know that I can give you a percentage of our time. And I've shared this before. Probably 90% of our time is tourism, and that doesn't mean that we don't support our members well, but about 10% of our time, and Linda, you can correct me if I'm wrong, is supporting our members. But our members are pretty well situated. They contact us, by usually email, not so much by phone. I would say 90% of the phone calls are tourists.
Councilor.
Okay, I just want to backtrack for a minute, because you had mentioned, okay, tell me if I got this right. 11 to 12,000 per month is your, basically how much?
Our run rate.
Your run rate, okay. Mm-hmm. So you said that it's about 5,000 for, the cost is for just running the membership part. Right?
Chamber. Mm-hmm.
And then 6,000 for the tourism part. So can you kind of give me, I think we have the cost of the telephone, the website, the email, the walk-ins. So that fulfillment is $6,000 a month, but can you kind of give me an idea of where the money actually goes? I mean, did I cover everything?
Well, I don't have a budget handy, but I can tell you off the top of my head some of the things we do for the visitor center is we pay for the cleaning services, which is about $17,000 a year. We pay postage machine. That varies. We have bulk mailings, and then we have regular mailings. We have very few mailings that go to the membership. We do everything electronic, even invoicing, unless they don't have a email account. We pay website hosting, obviously domain names. We kept all the domain names that we used on the tourism committee to track statistics on, what was hit the most. If it was birding, hiking, and it was birding, it was like 4 times more than all the other activities that we had on there. Toilet paper, paper towels for the visitor center, insurance. Besides telecommunication costs, there's a Quest bill, there's a Sprint bill, there's a Dex bill. And I could have been prepared and brought a budget. I apologize, I didn't.
I guess what I'm asking is, you still, though, all of those bills, like for the website hosting, there's members that are on the website, so that not all of it's charged towards tourism, correct?
It's commingled. The events calendar
Right, so
supports everything.
So what you do is when you go through it, you kind of say, well, this percentage of it is membership cost, and this percentage of this, monthly bill, it goes towards tourism. Because there are members of the chamber that are businesses that in entities that thrive on tourism. So you see where that gets even more confusing, because you have a member that is, and I guess what I'm asking is there's a division there between what members pay for and what the tourism portion is, that there's contributions from both ends to keep the website up, and running and things like that.
Well, the way it's running today is if you're a member, you have a website page. If you're an event and not a member, you're on our calendar page. Everything is supported in town.
Thank you, Lola.
You're welcome.
Thanks.
Is that enough information? Was that enough information?
Yeah, that was good. I don't want to make you develop a proposal standing here. So that was good. Sissy, did you want to add anything on the fulfillment side?
First of all, I want to thank Alex for using the terminology creative partnership, because that's really what it's all about. The Green Chamber is a nonprofit. We basically, at this point, we are doing everything at no cost. We realized in speaking with people, we're here to develop a sustainable economy with independent businesses. And I, of course, work downtown. Our real estate office is down there. We're open 7 days a week. And in talking with different businesses last year, we really, once the advertising and marketing stopped, we just saw the visitation drop off, and downtown was just like an empty canyon. And that's when I started talking to my board and starting talking to some of the other businesses, and we really felt that getting the visitor center open on weekends was going to help us. And so I went, spoke with my board, we spoke with Alex, we spoke with Lola, and really felt that if we could keep it open just 4 hours, and back when I used to be the chamber director, those were the key hours, 10 to 2 in the afternoon. And we do some weekends, like last weekend when we had the bike race and we had all the people parked in the parking lot. We actually were open until 5 o'clock that day because so many people needed to use the facilities, and we still had tourists coming in. Roughly the numbers, I believe, and it's going to be off a little bit, but since we started going in the weekend of Thanksgiving, and in January I think we had 141, then we went up to 381, 384 in March, and it dropped back to about 272 in April. But what we're seeing, and this was in the article in the Desert Exposures, we're seeing people come in, get information, leave their cars parked, go over downtown, and they're coming back with bags in both hands. And so they are shopping in downtown. There's people that have made comments, a lot of folks from like El Paso and Tucson, how thrilled they are to have the visitor center open on weekends. But once again, we're doing this at no cost. When I was with the Chamber, the visitor center itself was always run at no cost. It's always been run by volunteers. One of the key things we had is we had a coordinator who would make sure that all of the materials were stocked. If we needed to reorder items, it was coordinated with the Chamber. we had an individual in the chamber office that was just specifically for fulfillment. So that's the individual that when the mailings came in, we would go ahead and that individual would handle all of the fulfillment. And we kept a count on all that. The chamber was also handling fulfillment for the county, and the county would reimburse the chamber for the county side of things. When I got into the chamber, that was one of the complications that we had, is we had ads, even though they were going through an ad agency, there were publications that would have a Silver City ad right next to a Grant County ad. We had 2 different websites and 2 different phone numbers, and we get one call, and about 5 minutes later we get a second call. It was the same individual calling in. So I think that's the other thing, that hopefully there'll be coordination with the county tourism group. I agree with what's being said here, is our community is strong. We've got some fantastic individuals. We know how to market ourselves better than anybody else. We do need to do something that's year-round. Our events are strong and they bring people in, but again, it's a matter of coordination. I had a discussion with Faye the other day, and I know she's been doing some more general advertising as well, but we're Main Street. I mean, we see how everybody's trying to help sell everybody else and everybody's event because we are a community. So I think before any decisions are made, it would be great, Mayor, you've had such success in putting together committees, community committees, that then can provide the services and the input perspective we need. We know how to sell our own community, and so I hope you'll give us the opportunity as a community to get together and help you in designing what's going to be best for the future. I also feel that that percentage of going to the visitor center to run the visitor center is totally out of line. And my own philosophy is kind of no cost, low cost. What we did in the past was we worked with the state tourism office. They would bring in these familiarization tours, and that's probably, we got more leverage out of that than anything. And what we did is we worked like with the Inn on Broadway and some of these other businesses, and we'd get comped rooms, the Holiday Inn Express. We would bring in freelance writers. The chamber made arrangements with the lodger's tax money to get an enterprise van, so we were covered for insurance. And we basically went out and educated these people on who we were. They then went back and wrote a freelance article and would go and sell it to some publication. That's a third-party review of our community, and that, I mean, the payback on that was phenomenal. And just so you know, last night I actually provided a tour, and I know Dr. Bedison's going to be speaking with this group from Tucson, their docents, with the state museum system, and I gave them an hour-and-a-half tour on their bus last night of Silver City, and just basically to sell our community and let people know who we are. And by the time I was finished, the head of the tour said, "I want to move here." And I said, "I know I've done a good job." So I think that's the thing. We're known for the friendly community that we are, and we've attracted some fantastic people, and I think hopefully you'll give us all a chance to put together a plan that can work for us as a unified group.
That's really a good segue to where I'm headed next, but
Okay.
I'm just going to make a few comments. One was, I mentioned in the council meeting the other day that I was downtown several nights in the last few weeks, and I just saw the people, they were taking pictures all over the place, and the car would pull up, more people would get out, and then some would get in the car, take off, and then they'd come back, and they were looking for a place to eat dinner, and they were stopping. A cop drove by 3 times while we were standing there, and every time that group stopped the cop and asked them for information, for directions, for a good restaurant, or something. So I was standing there actually talking to Councilor Bedison on the sidewalk for quite some time, and she was wondering why I was so distracted looking beyond her. Well, when we got done talking, I walked down there and they were taking a picture, so I didn't want to cut off their picture, so I stood there and waited, and then I walked up and just started asking them questions. And some of the questions were, where are you from? Why are you here? And what did you expect when you got here? And from all the research that they did to pick Silver City as a place to visit, did we meet those expectations? Because that's one of my pet peeves is false advertising, because we want them to come here more than once. So they were very happy with what they had found available on the internet, mostly for identifying what we were. The one thing they wanted to know was how to find St. Vincent's Catholic Church. They wanted to see that. And then they were going to go have dinner downtown. And then they really, really didn't believe that I was the mayor. I am so young. But Mary Ann Marler came by and saved me.
Well, Mayor, that brings up a point, too. The downtown merchants have gotten together, especially to clean up downtown a couple weeks ago, and we're continuing to meet on Tuesday mornings. And one thing that came up is that we haven't spoken to anybody yet, but one of the ideas that came up a couple weeks ago would be to have a police officer that literally walks the beat downtown, and that basically is a PR person that sits there and makes sure people are getting the information that they need. And again, a friendly police officer, because a lot of times we're getting a lot of drive-bys by the officers, but it's so much friendlier if they're downtown walking. And just to drop a name, we think Click would work out just great. She used to be the enforcement officer down there. She gets along with all the businesses, but we think that would go a long way. And I think that's the other thing to look at for the city is really a public relations plan. It's more than just marketing. It's a matter of us telling our story of who we are and why we're here. And we've got plenty of citizens. Gary Emerson that moved here because of the dark skies, and I've got people that moved here from Disney Productions because of the way this community was marketed years in the past. So I think that's the thing we need to look at is what perspective are we sending out there, and how can we attract the people that we want to have be a part of our community.
I'm going to give you one more short story, and I believe Sandra is the one that mentioned this, was the Wild Wild West history. And I could tell you, we get a lot of visitors here from Germany. Germans love the Wild Wild West. And I've had them in my office. We had a German film that was filmed downtown Silver City that you can find it on the German Google website. And I have a piece of a house from Germany that was brought to me. But those are things that we need to make more visible and capitalize on. We know they're coming. I mean, and Alamogordo has a German Air Force base. So they're here, and we need to make sure that they're driving over from Alamogordo, that they're telling their family and friends that visit the United States that this is a good place to come and check out.
First year of the Millie and Billy Ball, the day of the ball, everybody was dressed in character. I don't know if you remember this. But you walked downtown, and I know I loved it. It was last month. Nick was dressed up like he was from the 1930s. And, I mean, that sort of thing, if we can get into some of that, especially for some of the events, people just absolutely love it.
That was the only clean clothes Nick has that day.
Are there any questions of me before I sit down?
No, I think between all the discussion that we've had so far, I think we've got a good start here. We're gonna take a short break, and then I'm gonna get right to the proposal, and we're gonna start dissecting the proposal a little bit. And sure. Go ahead.
It sort of came to mind when Lola was talking. I think you've got two things that you need to be looking at here. One is the fulfillment, which is answering people's questions, mailing things, and that's a piece of what we have to pay for to a certain extent. And the other part is promotion, and promotion is a whole different thing from fulfillment. And I personally, I've said this before to you, Mayor, I personally think we need a tourism committee that's outside the chamber includes the various people who are affected by tourism. And one other thing I wanted to point out is I was recently at a Regional 2 tourism council meeting, and the spaceport that is coming over in the Las Cruces area is going to have a major impact on this part of the state. And they are forecasting hundreds of thousands of tourists coming who are going to want something else to do than just go look at the spaceport. And so we need to get ourselves poised to be one of the places they want to come.
Kurt?
Good morning, Mr. Mayor, council members. Kurt Elvershart from the Murray Hotel, about to become a contributor to the Lodgers Tax Fund. I just had a couple of observations. I think that the continued marketing, especially in those shoulder and off seasons, is really the key to keeping the cash flowing in the system. I think that we have made a lot of good lists. In fact, those lists are great. Those top 10 lists, the Modern Maturity, the Outside Magazine, the articles in the New York Times, that kind of stuff is what draws attention from people who wouldn't go looking for Silver City. If they're looking for the Old West experience or they're looking for the Southwest, they're going to trip over us eventually. They're probably going to hit Chaco Canyon first. They're going to come to northern New Mexico, not even know there's another half of the state. But at some point, some of them are going to figure out that there's some interesting stuff down here. It's the people who had no idea they wanted to come here that I think are our target audience. I think restricting the funding to nonprofits is possibly good. I think what would be more important is making sure that the funding is being spent in accordance with the guidelines and the intents that are put forth to the committee or the panel or whoever it is that makes the decision at the time, the council itself. And in that vein, some sort of cooperative advertising arrangement that does repeated impressions. Putting one ad in New Mexico Magazine is great. But if we put 52 ads in a weekly paper in Tucson or Phoenix, and we hit people week after week after week with a continued message that has some consistency to it, I think that can be done with a combination of private money and lodgers tax funds. If you use the lodgers tax funds to purchase a portion of the space, to brand it, to maybe talk about an event or some history or something else, and you combine that with ads that are paid for by other institutions, whether they be for-profit or non-profit, so that the lodgers tax money is clearly segregated to promoting the area. But in addition to that, in the same advertising buy, you've got repeated impressions of individual businesses or individual organizations. Some sort of approach like that leverages money that's going to be spent anyway, but collects that together and presents it in a form that repeats that message over and over again, especially during the periods when we don't have occupancy and we don't have a lot of visitors. We have a compelling story for people who have 120-degree summer temperatures and dirty air and traffic. There's 6 million of them in Phoenix. There's 1 million in Tucson. There's 3 million if you count Ciudad Juarez and El Paso together at least. And we're a very attractive place for those people to come see. And I think that's a piece of our marketing that needs to be thought through on a regional basis. So anyway, thank you.
Hey. Do you have time?
Yeah.
Sure.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Faye McCalmont, Director of the Members Region Arts Council. I just want to say that I served on the Chamber Tourism Committee for many years. And during that time, it was basically the same small group of people that was on that committee. We had a little bit of changeover, but it was basically the same people. And I know that you have had some difficulty filling other community committees. And I just want to caution that as much as we want to do that and as much good as came from that, it's difficult when you rely on a small little group like that. We had our most success when we would have the one person on the committee that did a great deal of work. And when that person would leave, we were kind of in the lurch and things would kind of go down again. And I'm talking about contracting with graphic designers, ad placement with all these different publications, keeping track of the payments, keeping track of the tear sheets for reimbursements, placing radio advertising. That is a huge amount of work. And so I'm wondering if there might be a way that you could combine a citizen committee with a paid staff position somewhere, perhaps at the visitor center or whatever, where that position is mainly, and maybe not full-time, but focused only on all of those things, ad placement, graphic design, payment, reimbursement, all of those things, as well as putting our events on national calendars, putting everything that happens in this county on the national calendars of events, and they're all over the place. Some of them are focused on, biking, hiking, festivals. There are multiple calendars on the web that really we should have our events on, but that takes a lot of time and effort for somebody to do. So it seems like if you had a paid person that could do some of that work, and then also have a citizen committee perhaps that could give input and help decide where that money is going to go, I would just suggest that might be a good way to go.
Thank you. Council.
I move that we have a short break.
There's a motion and a second to have a short break. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We're in recess. We'll call this meeting back to order. We're gonna spend quite a bit of time probably dissecting the proposal that's out there, because we need to make sure that staff has a good idea on what to put in the proposal, and I think we have several issues to discuss. So I'm going to start really with the first item under introduction, item A, purpose of this request for proposals. Does anybody have any comments on those two paragraphs? Sandra.
Do we want to say that it leads to overnight lodging, or does that automatically set up a condition that not everything's going to necessarily be able to meet? I don't know how else we do it, but it just sets up that the only people that will fund are ones who indicate overnight lodging.
Well, in this context, I think it fits, because even if you're just doing area advertising of the wilderness and all the natural assets that we have,
the goal is to have people come and stay.
the goal is to continue to build the fund. Later on here, I've got some issues with where we went with that. Councillor Dyson.
Thank you, Mayor. My only concern is, and I noticed this when I was reading it, that in the second paragraph, we have qualified organizations underlined, but we don't really, then we go into the, I'm trying to think of where it is in here. I'm not sure if it actually uses that terminology again as qualified organization, just to be consistent, do you know what I mean? I think that we have certain specific requirements that they need to meet, and I'm looking for it.
We have that somewhere.
Which then, I guess it's the minimum requirements. Anita, would that be would be the qualifying, which would be under B2 on page number 2?
Yes, the minimum, and then there were also some other specifications.
So can we maybe explain that term? I mean, or maybe the town provides funding to organizations that meet the minimum requirements? You see, I'm just trying to make it consistent, so I don't know which one's the best thing to use.
Or change minimum requirements to qualified organizations.
Yes, either way. Or
Just
explain.
make them both the same, either one. Okay.
Okay.
Another question is, since we're promoting the region, do you still want to have them all located in Silver City? Because I mean, if we're going to promote mining, for example, the mining tours that they give.
I don't think so. Well, I mean, for one, it says main branch office in Silver City. I'm not even quite sure if all the applicants have a branch office, much less a main one. I think maybe some qualifying language that is there's a presence or
Physical presence.
some way that, I mean, it goes back to what Sissy was addressing, is we use local folks for this. They have an inherent knowledge of this area that others don't. So maybe it should just say, be able to demonstrate a knowledge of the area. Yeah. You got to come up here. They won't pick you up.
You could change the New Mexico-based organization to regional, some description of the region, whether it's Grant County or, and that would, it would be based in this area. I don't know how you want to define the area. I think Grant County at least, if not, I don't know if you want to go any bigger than that. Instead of saying New Mexico-based, say Grant County-based would mean it's here somewhere.
How about demonstrated presence in Silver City / Grant County? And then they can explain what that presence is, because what Torquila was saying, they don't even have an office, right? But you have a demonstrated presence in town and within Grant County. But I don't know, I'm just trying to...
But are we actually worried about their presence, or are we actually worried about their knowledge of the area?
Both. But, I mean, because if we have the main branch office in Silver City, that's a presence. It doesn't necessarily need knowledge.
I would say take out both B and E and just say that be able to demonstrate sufficient knowledge of the area.
But I'm talking also up on the second paragraph, located in Silver City as well.
Yeah.
I would delete that.
Mm-hmm.
Just delete that.
The other thing.
Yeah, just a minor point. There's D and F are redundant. They're the same thing on B2.
That's an addition out of the study that I think we have to talk about. I mean, the matching funds, are we talking cash match? Are we talking in kind? You know, I mean, if we put in kind, the Blues Fest, the Tour de Gila, they're going to have no problem. If we put a cash match, they may.
Also, are we talking 100% matching?
Yes. Is it 1-to-1, or is it, you know?
So what do we want to do with the match?
I don't like matches at all. For most of our small organizations, it may be an insurmountable hurdle.
Could we maybe give them points under the evaluation that if they do have a match?
I think if we have in-kind matches, I mean, we have all these volunteers that are working these events, so they can easily reach the in-kind match. You know, when they hold events, they do things. So I think that if you say, you know, matches and include matching funds, you say in-kind, because that person is spending their volunteer time.
Michelle?
Just to make a statement, some of the smaller organizations, like Michael had stated earlier, is they rely just on this. I think it was maybe the Rolling Stones or the Copper Country Cruisers. They're such a small organization that all they need is just this one, you know, help. We help them out by giving them advertising in a couple of rooms at the hotel. You know, we do the in-kind, but if we force everyone to do that, it may be a weekend that, you know, like you said, maybe volunteerism, but I agree with Michael, the matching funds I don't think is necessary for this application.
Well, Mayor, I think as far as, not cash match, but the in-kind match, I mean, by demonstrating how much time you're going to put into making this event successful, I mean, is something that should be evaluated. Because if you're not going to put any time into it, you're just going to walk up here and say, give me some money, and I'm going to put a couple of hours, and I'm just going to put on this thing here real quick. I mean, compared to someone that's going to put on an event that's a startup event that's going to put in hundreds of hours, I mean, you can put a good dollar amount on that cash match, that time match, and you want to help support events like that that have potential of being successful.
But would you object to moving it out of the minimum requirements and putting it in the evaluation criteria?
Oh, no. I just would like it to be there to show how much their time they're willing to put into what they're going to do.
Nick?
I'm going to be difficult. I know that surprises everyone. To me, the point of having a cash match required would be to raise the bar so that small organizations can apply, so that you have to have a certain level of sophistication and fundraising to be able to apply for lodger's tax. I'm not saying that that's a good thing. I'm just saying that's the only argument I could see for doing it. Now, if you want to talk about doing in-kind matches and counting our number of hours, to me, you can do that. But I think it would be an exercise in making us all feel good about ourselves, because when I look at the list of organizations that apply for lodger's tax, and certainly the list of organizations that receive lodger's tax, we're not talking about any organizations or any activities that aren't putting in hundreds of hours of volunteer time to make their event take place. So if you want to add additional bookkeeping, administrative overhead in terms of coming up with and keeping track of these numbers just so that we have numbers, then that's fine. But I don't think that I particularly would see any great meaning in those numbers. We need to find metrics that will distinguish one from another, and if Faye's events or my events or anyone else's events will give you hundreds and hundreds of hours, I don't think that's going to be a problem, but it's going to be extra work, and I don't think it's really going to tell us anything at the end of it all.
I think historically speaking, you're absolutely correct. I think the potential that we have not seen in some of the other grants that I review, we're seeing some pretty creative, let's try to match our fund to the project, and so I think there is some value in giving points in an evaluation for in-kind or cash. I mean, with weighted, in-kind or cash weighted the same. Any objections?
No.
Anything else? The detailed scope of work under specifications, number 1. That language that Sandra used out of Los Alamos might fit there really, really well. Any objections? Anything else under minimum requirements? One thing that I had on the slide was must be in good standing with the town, and actually our attorney had brought that one up, that if we're having compliance issues on they're not paying their gross receipts, they're not paying their lodger's tax, they're whatever other issue they might be in non-compliance with, a code enforcement issue, we may not want to be jumping into business with them.
I think it should be on there.
Any objections? Any other minimum requirement discussion? Hearing none. Number 3, specifications.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
On A, offers should describe how their organization has assisted other organizations in their efforts towards tourism leading to lodging. I guess I don't understand that. In some respects, I mean, are we talking about the town as the other organization? But it just seems like, when I first read it, I thought it meant, how is this organization helping the one over here? Unless they're doing cooperative advertising, which in that case, if they're doing cooperative advertising, that lends itself to answering that.
You may.
On this right here, we were just discussing that, say a major event such as the Blues Fest brings people into this community, they get the first sight. Now they come back. We have had people come back to other events, other times, come back to the Cliff Dwellings, come back to the City of Rocks, come back to just go shop downtown because they've seen it once. That would be an assistance to other organizations and towards tourism. The only problem I see now is how are you going to document that? It is done. You know it's done because of just hearsay that we have at the hotel, but how do you officially document that?
Any comments?
Yeah, but I think the intent here in A is that you're not using lodger's tax money to fund an event or something that only benefits your organization. That you're not using, let's say, lodger's tax to fund a fundraiser to increase your coffers. That I think the idea is that you can at least demonstrate how what it is that you are doing is going to benefit the town as a whole and benefit tourism in particular. So I think that's really kind of what that's supposed to mean. Whether or not we need to have it in there. Unfortunately, when something goes without saying, then usually it needs to be said.
Well, I mean, if we use that interpretation, then maybe we need to wordsmith that a little bit.
That was what I was going to suggest, is take out that other organization and just show how they've assisted toward tourism leading to lodging.
Yeah, I think that's...
And just take
that's
out that
better.
other organization, which is sort of
Yeah.
unclear. I'm sorry, Mayor, to go back to the specific minimal requirements. Are we going to require that they be nonprofits?
We didn't bring that up.
No, I know. I forgot.
Any discussion on that? I kind of lean towards where'd Kurt go? What Kurt was saying, now he's not here to defend himself, was I'm not too sure I'm worried about their corporate status more than I am, are they actually accomplishing the goals of the program? Any comments?
Just to add to that, yes, you can get out of compliance with just by being a month late on sending your corporate report. Now you're out of compliance, even though you're perfectly good, and in a couple more months, they're going to have you as being in compliance. We could end up having someone who's routinely in compliance with all corporate regulators, but they're just a month late, and all of a sudden, we're disqualifying them just because of timing. It's kind of hard.
I'm Lois Duffy from the Gallery Association, and on that note, we are not a nonprofit. We've never applied for it, but we represent so many artists and galleries and studios. We feel that we are doing a service this past year with the ads that we've been running in Tucson, El Paso, and Albuquerque. And we'd like to continue doing it unless another organization could take that project over for us. But anyway, we are not a nonprofit group.
So there is actually no formal...
No, we've never applied for it. We just really, our whole point of the organization was to get together to pool money for advertising.
Thanks, Lois.
Yep.
Have we had any issues with non-incorporated groups or individuals?
I think we could when it comes to anti-donation.
Would this be considered a donation, though?
Well, we would be, because we cannot provide funds to help somebody make money for themselves.
But our contract is value added.
Yeah.
I think we could get away with that because we're asking for the tourism part of what they're doing. As long as we can make sure that they show how the value added is clear in their proposal.
I'm comfortable with that. You guys?
Yeah, fine.
We're back. We're comfortable with not requiring it to be a nonprofit, a 501c something. I think we're back to number 3, specifications. Any issues, A or B?
We've covered
D through G. The exit interview, that came up. What are we going to ask? I mean, they have to do a final report, right? That shows exactly what they did with their money.
They don't have to do it now.
But they will hear.
They would hear.
I think an informal exit interview is a good idea. Did that come out of Los Alamos? Is it the guys that did that?
I think so.
I don't know where that came from.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. This is because all this stuff's pretty complicated, especially when you start trading off the differences between, say, an event that is discrete, like the Blues Festival, versus, say, the Folk Series, which is indiscreet, but it's over a longer period of time. And figuring out how our relative expenditures are, how the value of those expenditures, how we balance those out is really complex. And so I think an exit interview allows us to kind of bootstrap the process. So we're able to talk to organizations that have gotten money, and they can kind of tell us, especially if there is an emphasis on this, someone brought it up, the third party review. I think a lot of times the third party review happens afterwards, and so capturing that may come through the exit interview.
The question then would be, who would the exit interview be with, and what would be the scope of the questions?
You know, Mayor, I would recommend that, you know, we don't require the exit interview before final payment, but a final presentation to the council before they can apply for future lodgers tax funding.
You're going to run all 15
throughout the year. I mean, some of them finish early, some of them, and they can come in for the next year, just so they can come in and have thought about what the results of what they did and present it to you.
I really don't like that idea.
If you want to hear it verbally, in E, where you state that all recipients of lodgers tax will be required to submit a year-end report on the results of the measurements and the success of your event. When you submit the report, why don't you submit it in person? And that way you get to hear it verbally if you have questions of them. And that way you're not making them do it twice if they're just presenting that one time.
Honestly, I think that puts the council in a position to micromanage the process and the. You're looking at, if we look at the first one, the bicycle festival, they got $500. and we're going to make them do a report. We're going to make them do an exit interview, whether it's with staff, whether it's with coming before a council meeting. I mean, for $500, we're just adding additional burden that may not be worth the $500. But
I was just going to say, I think the year-end report is a good idea. We need to give a date for the year-end report, though. I mean, I would assume that would be after final submission of payment. That I would like to see included in the packet if they'd received monies before, to give to the council. I don't like this kind of piecemeal kind of suggestion, because it's going to be difficult to remember back, 12 months prior when someone finished their event, and they come before us again. And I think the exit interview.
Well, the problem with, if we try to give you the report before the next award, is that we're going to have to make them submit for final payment before you do the final award. So instead of giving them through the end of the fiscal year for final payment, I have to move that date up, which I've been trying to move back to the end of the fiscal year. That way they have the whole fiscal year to spend their money. So that's an issue about having the final report at final payment.
I fully agree that's an issue, because, I mean, if you built a website, you're going to want paid for it, and your benefit's going to come in the months to come.
I think that it's a little redundant to have the final report and the exit interview, and I don't know why any of it has to be done face-to-face in person. I think it would be nice to have a final report from each organization saying how they spent their money, and that it's something that we could look at the next year when they apply for funds again. It gives us, some measurable things to look at.
Thanks.
But Alex, you do raise a point, because some of these events are, the blues festivals at the end of May.
Yeah, she doesn't start using her money till now.
So to try to get us a final report before we make, it's one of those things where it's a catch-22, because they can't produce necessarily a year-end report, for instance, because of the lateness of their event and insufficient time for any of us to look at it as part of the application, because we're running right up against time again, like you'd mentioned, of when we have to do the next year.
I think we leave it as it's written on E, delete F. And, we can continue to pursue the issues that Jamie was talking about, but I don't think we actually know what questions we would ask in an exit interview that would actually make it beneficial. And then you leave E, but you're not tying it into the final payment, because it's going to come with time. However, if somebody gets behind on that and they can't give us a justification of why, we're going to look at that when next year's funding comes up and hold them to become compliant with their contract.
Mr. Mayor and Council, if I may, the state of New Mexico requires what they call a tracking and impact report. It's only 3 pages, and they have it's already created. They don't require it before final payment, but they do require it with the following year's submission. So if you would like a copy of that to see the information, I'd be happy to provide it.
Yeah, we'll give it. Any objections to leaving E as is, delete F?
Go ahead, Faye.
And then if it could be specific as to the measurements of success. Because as you know, the challenge for those of us doing free events, we don't have tickets. We can't, and I know Michelle talked about the intake interview at the hotels. We've tried it for years. It just doesn't, it does not work, even though in the recommendation, that was kind of their main recommendation, was that we do an intake form. The hotels are not able to help us in that way. So we don't have the kinds of measurements for some events that you might have for other events. Those that have a gate and tickets, and you can require people's ask for people's zip codes and things like that. Now we can gather all of that in somewhat informal ways. We already have an online audience survey. We take audience surveys during the event through the crowd. We log everyone who calls in for information. We try to gather whatever information we can from our website. But I'm just saying that those are not, we cannot say absolutely how many room nights. We cannot say absolutely where people heard about the event. Even just in people who call us, we always ask, how did you hear about this event? A common response is, oh gosh, I don't know, I think I might have heard it on the radio, I might have seen it on, they don't really know. And so we're trying to capture the information because we also want to know that we're spending our money wisely and in the right places. But you just might think about what you're going to require of all of us to give you for those measurements of success.
That's actually coming up here very soon.
It said measurements of success.
No, that's a great point, though.
Do we need to add any items? We deleted one, but anybody want to add one? Good.
I'm sorry, it kind of goes back a little bit, but I don't know if it really goes to the specifications, but somewhere I think we might want to mention our local preferences. Because I know Los Alamos does that. They mention that, folks that are local in their proposal, because essentially this is a contract.
That's duplicative of the law, though, isn't it?
Is it? Okay.
Yeah, we have that. That's in the procurement code already.
No, I know. They just mentioned their ordinance in their thing, but that's fine.
Anybody want to change the procurement manager?
No.
Anybody have issues with definitions of terminology? Requirements. Item E, page 5, number 1, letter of transmittal. Any discussion on that?
Has the floor.
Has the floor. Do we need to also put in under F the NMCRS that is listed on the form, on the application? Or is that redundant? Because some of this stuff is on like the federal tax ID is on the application itself.
Well, nonprofits aren't going to pay the largest tax. New Mexico.
But they have a federal tax number usually for
gross receipts tax.
Not the CRS number if they have employees.
If they have employees, yeah, but if they don't.
But then we go back to Lois. Are we chasing people up? I mean, they don't have a formal organization. Their tax ID number is going to be somebody's social security number.
And that person's going to be taxed, right?
That's their business.
It could because it's in.
You should be sending them a 1099.
Yeah, we should.
An individual.
But I think if we make a requirement for the CRS, we've essentially eliminated those non-incorporated groups.
Well, if we're doing it for profit and non-profit, do we really need the tax ID number at all?
Yeah, you do, because you got to send them a 1099.
Yeah, to an individual in one of those unincorporated groups, they actually should be paying sales tax. Or remitting sales tax to the town to the state.
To state.
Well, F would still, it still applies, but they can, if we have these other two, then I just think that we should include that. They can say, I'm sorry, we don't have an NMCRS.
Well, if the whole intent is 1099, we just need the federal and the Social Security. We don't need
That's right. That's correct.
CRS
For our purposes.
for our purposes anyway.
Right, but if you go back and you look further at the application, it does ask for the NMCRS. So I guess I don't know how that plays in. Okay.
Any other issues on the letter? Mission statement of the organization is a requirement? Anybody not want to require an application?
No, but I do have a comment.
You may.
I like to follow the way Los Alamos has it laid out, where they say proposal format, and explain here that say that the proposal must take the form, must use the attached form, which is the lodger's tax, just to be more explicit, because that goes into what I want to say about F on the page. So if you look on page 52, it says proposal format, and we're not going to say that, but if we just say proposals must use the attached form, must complete and use the attached form, a lodger's tax application, or whatever it's called. Do you see what I'm saying? Because when I get to F, I'm going to say it should be proposal evaluation criteria. I want to put proposal in front of it, because I think people need to understand that the lodger's tax application needs to address everything that's in the evaluation criteria, even though the questions on the application don't lend themselves to this particularly, unless you really think about it really hard.
So completed lodger's tax application in supplied format?
I'd say proposal, comma, in the attached form.
Completed tax proposal, comma, in the...
Yeah. That, if maybe we should just say, completed lodger's tax proposal application. Or proposal, I don't know.
Any objections?
Okay, F.
F, it should say proposal evaluation criteria. That's why I'm trying to be consistent here, because see, then the applicant can look at the application, even though it may not be very specific. If it asks a general question such as, how does the proposal meet, well, we use proposal right there. Let's see. I'm trying to figure out how to do this. Somewhere in here you have to kind of talk about your marketing goals, and you need to describe your target markets. Kind of gets to that, but this actually details what we want, in that we want them to consider these things. We want them to provide a detailed advertising budget, even though it doesn't tell us in the proposal that that's what you really want people, in the application, that you really want them to do.
Are you still in proposal?
Yes.
Any objections?
I'm sorry.
We're just adding the word.
Okay.
How about item number 1? I think this goes back to what Faye just discussed, is how many Town of Silver City nights will be generated. We're going to have a hard time with some of these applications actually getting that lined out. So how do we cover that? The goal is obviously to get people to stay here. You got something to say? You got an idea?
Well, I was talking to Michelle earlier about how the hotels may not be able to collect exact information, but if you call them, they pretty much know what people are there for, what they've come into town for. Is that correct, Michelle? Yeah.
What Faye and I had discussed was Take Tour of the Gila. Take the Blues Fest. If you call our hotel that weekend, more than likely, more than 75 to 85% of the hotel is going to be with individuals that are here for that specific event. Very rarely do we have the room for other individuals to do other things those weekends. That weekend, I know there's a golf tournament in town, and we house maybe 10 to 15 couples. In our hotel, that's, the rest is Blues Fest. But I can't tell you a specific number, because then we go back to the issue of, may I please ask why you're here? Can I write this down? Will you please fill out this survey? We get back to that point. We can give you an idea. We can give you a roundabout figure. We can tell you that we are full that weekend because we have these events in town.
Yeah, I'm not overly concerned with the events. I mean, we know the Blues Fest is, you've probably been filled for that weekend for many months
in
already.
advance.
The bike race. I mean, we know the hotels were filled months ago for the bike race. I'm worried about putting this requirement in for whoever submits the proposal for area advertising. If this is in here, they could get bumped
Right.
because of they're not able to demonstrate how many nights, because they haven't got a clue who drove through town.
Mayor, could I make a suggestion that maybe we take down the point value for this? It's been given more point value than maybe it should, and maybe the number 10 one, did your marketing advertising benefit Silver City as well as your organization? In what ways did you, and that could be a description of, and maybe give that more points. Maybe we just need to change the point value, and we don't expect everybody to come up with 100 points necessarily. And maybe we add another question that covers some of that, San Vicente, artist booklet, the Main Street advertising, those kinds of things, they have less measurable. But if you put that we advertise in a major market that has 1 million people, well, that has some point value.
Well, and Main Street's a good one. We didn't chase him off because that's part of the overall experience of visitors to Silver City. They may not, people may not come here to directly see our Main Street, but it's part of the experience that they'll get. So I think we should consider that.
So maybe you change the point value, make that not so important.
But
I was just to say, maybe we could qualify the question by saying, if this is an event, can you estimate or whatever? And looking at the report that was generated, I noticed that there were differences between expectations for different groups about, well, they haven't told us how many, room nights there are. But then that same expectation wasn't required of another group. And I see what you're saying. I just think that we might still, if it is an event, just say, is it an event? So then we have to decrease the points, because it's only would be events that would probably be able to give an estimate by calling the hotel and get a general idea. I'm not sure how to deal with this, to be honest with you.
you got to come up to the front.
Yeah.
What about the idea of a separate application for events?
Speak up, please.
Or an addendum for event, a special application for events? Some of in the proposals, I think Las Vegas has a separate application for events. They're asked slightly different questions, slightly different criteria. Another idea I had was that if you look at where people are advertising and the subscription numbers and the distribution of that publication, it at least tells you that ad has been put before those people, right, in that publication. So perhaps that's another way to judge is what kind of publications are these organizations advertising in. If they're doing area advertising, well, how broad a reach are they getting with the publications that they're using and that kind of thing? That might be another way to another judging factor.
That, I mean, we may consider that because if you just change that question to how many Town of Silver City nights will be generated, or if unable to determine, what is your marketing coverage?
I'm just wondering how this proposed scenario of the two applications would apply to an organization like Main Street. Because, we file an application for lodger's tax and we've had a good record of being awarded it. But part of what we promote is events. Part of what we promote is just downtown as an attraction in the community. And I think you're right, it is an attraction. It's a part of the overall experience. And I'd go further than that and say that in terms of the things that attract people to visit Silver City, you talk about what the big attractions are day in and day out. It's your cliff dwellings, your catwalk, your national forest, and downtown. And out of all those things, the only one of them that's in Silver City is downtown. So I just wonder, would we file separate applications for funding to promote the Lighted Christmas Parade, for instance, or the Celebration of Spring, and then the general advertising? That would be one question. My other question is that as I look through these criteria and these point evaluations, there's no incentive for us to work together in promoting events. For instance, for the Tour of the Gila, they get lodger's tax money, but we do the Celebration of Spring in conjunction with them. And in our advertising for Main Street, we promote any event that happens downtown, whether we produce it or not, meaning Chocolate Fantasia goes in our advertising. So I'm just curious about how this is all going to work out.
Councilor Bedison.
Nick just brought up some things that made me think that maybe A should say, does your organization create an attraction for an overnight stay, thus creating lodger's tax? That's a different question. And then the second one, instead of how many Town of Silver City's nights be generated, what you want to ask is, what were the organizations that you coordinated with, in terms of providing an attraction for overnight lodging, for guests that do overnight lodging? It's a little different, but it's still getting to that overnight lodging and getting to that, that does give points for people that do, because we all do this really well, the coordination aspect to work together. It's just a suggestion.
I think I'm about to the point of just add a qualifier there, that if this is an event type organization, give us a projection. I mean, we're going to know. I mean, we obviously know that Main Street can't tell us how many people visited Main Street today. The Blues Fest, we know the hotels are full. The bike race, we know the hotels are full. But to even have them try to count, it's just not going to happen. But if they gave us an application where they chased all the bike riders to Deming and Lordsburg, we're going to see that in the application, in the proposal. Comments?
The other thing is you have to remember that there will be people who are starting new events, and they're not going to have a history of how many lodging nights, and yet you still will want to fund them if it's an event that we think is going to bring people to town. And just in the last couple of months, through the Arts and Cultural District, we've heard several new events that are being planned to bring people into town at times when there aren't events right now. So these things are happening, and I expect that those people will be asking for lodger's tax as well. And you do already ask in your, under specifications, describe how your organization has assisted in efforts towards tourism. So that's where we could list, like Main Street, all the things that they do to promote other things happening in town. So you kind of have that covered.
I'm sorry. Perhaps, Mayor, we decrease the point value on that to less
Yeah.
than 25, and maybe add in a question, because I think that was a good point, a question that has maybe 10 points. It's not gigantic, so it doesn't hurt somebody. What other groups did you coordinate with? And give people points for doing coordinated advertising or working together with other groups. Add another question. There's also a place where number 5 may well come out because of the matching funds thing. You've got some 10 points there you might be able to play with.
Anybody object to changing it from 25 to 10?
No.
We still can't forget the question, and our effort was to have identified what is the impact on lodging. So
That's the question. That's the question that should be asked.
okay, so you want to delete B and just insert that question?
Yeah, because an event can talk about that, and as well as Main Street. What is the impact on lodging? Please describe the impact on lodging.
I think that gives you an opportunity, though, to not give us a number. To not, I mean, I really don't think Jack would have a hard time answering that question. Schedule another event and see where they stay for the night. You know, the hotel's full. So, is that fair? Number 2. What were we getting at on
Well, you want to
B?
know. On what? B? You want to know who it's marketed towards. That's really what it's asking. What's the demographic of the audience you expect? Because you can do that for different events, but then you have something that's more general, and you can say, well, we range from, children all the way up to whatever with the Main Street. It gives them a chance to talk about who they serve.
What? I'd rather see what is the age, income, hometown target of your proposal versus
They're just using, the language that's in here is pretty standard for what many events and organizations are asked to, like the University Museum, what is our audience? Who are we serving? And we have a very broad audience. We can talk about different things. So they're using standard terminology there to talk about who you...
You're going to use my argument on me. That was good.
You can say target, but I still think
Thank you.
audience needs to be in there.
I just stopped the sentence because that was the
Okay.
obvious. Hometown of the target audience. We good? Anything else on 2?
One thing is the emphasis on quantity is a little problematic. It seems that how people get their information is somewhat cultural, and so you could have, with the way this is written, you could have a group that's highly organized. Say, for example, bicyclists. They talk. Well, let me give you the best example is Chris Grealish's project, where he had a demographic, and it was only 7 guys from all over the country, but they were very wealthy folks that were going to come to Silver City. That wouldn't get a very high point value, even though it's a group that we may be very interested in bringing to Silver City because they're so well connected to other folks.
It does ask the question on income.
Let's see, it says...
B.
Okay, so the maximum value is a demographic that would spend money in restaurants, stay in rented home, visit our retailers. So with Chris Grealish, his project, what he was going to do is he was going to have these guys stay at his house or whatever.
But that doesn't generate lodger's tax.
Well, it does in that social group is extremely well organized. And we know that the marketing through informal sectors, these third-party reviews, are extremely powerful. For example, the Great Divide race. We got a guy that come through town, Cass. He's got an audience of 1 million guys that are watching his blog. Extremely valuable to have somebody like that. Would that be captured by this?
Well,
I think it absolutely could be captured by
Yes.
that if you took a view of the proposal, and the proposal is very well written to show that why we should spend $2,000 on 7 guys versus an event that we know is going to bring in 2,000 guys. If they can articulate that in the proposal, then I think we would consider it.
Don't get the points.
Yeah, I also think that's where we target. We discussed the 6 key tags that used to be used in the advertising. That may become one of them, is that corporate, the president of the university that just got nominated or selected at Western, he mentioned some of those issues when he's doing corporate fundraising, is you build those relationships. So I do think that allows it, but they have to articulate it in the proposal. Any other discussion on that?
No.
Number 3.
I like this one. It gives folks an opportunity that are starting a new event to explain, how, I think it's a great question.
Any discussion on that one? Moving right along, number 4.
In number 4, Mayor, we come up again under B with a variety of matching funds, and we talked about that, and I think we want to make sure that people say that it can be in kind and or cash, to make sure, because we don't have it in the specifications anymore. We were going to put it into the proposal portion of it. Does that explain it?
Can we just put it in the definitions?
Sure.
Match, in kind or cash?
Sure.
That'll save a whole lot of going back and forth. Anything on, where we at, 5? Do we want to give that 10 points, since we kind of knocked down the value?
Which one, 4 or 5?
5. 4's already at 5 points.
Well, 5's at 10 points, so you want to...
Do we want to keep it at 10? Honestly, I think 3 should probably be at 10 and 5 should be at 5.
Yes. But then you may, by doing that with 3, you're giving more weight to people that are creating new events, organizations, rather than continuing. Because 3 is about something that's new. I mean, there could be a continuing organization that creates a new event, but I'm not sure you want to give them more weight than everyone else.
Yeah, if you took out A, that would work.
The way I see this points working is that some people get points in certain categories, some get in other categories, and then it sort of evens out. So that 10 that favors the new guys, they're not going to be able to answer the 10 where you tell how many people you brought in. So I think that some of these points, not everybody's not going to get points in all these categories. So it's okay if they don't cover everybody, as long as you make sure you have enough categories to cover the different kinds of things we do.
On number 3, because I don't think I see anything that targets the off-season, the shoulder events. And that could be included in number 3, and that could be an addition why you're giving it more weight. Because it helps both new events and the shoulder events.
So we just add in absent or during shoulder season?
Or, wait, I'm sorry.
3A. Event that is otherwise absent.
I would do it in a B. I would say B is, does this event occur during a shoulder season? And then increase the maximum point value to 10, and then say, providing a program event not only for, keep that, but also that if it occurs in the shoulder season, that would also get them more points. I don't know how you want to do that.
I'm fine with the way you just said it. Go ahead.
I think anything that would enhance a more continuous flow of people into the town, and also local people, I know that's not our focus here as far as money is concerned, but would be an asset, because we have a boom-bust kind of pattern here that some of us, certainly those of us in the ACD, are trying to even out a little more and avoid the weekends that are oversaturated with events, and then the weeks and weekends where there's nothing much going on. So I think anybody who can make an effort to promote an event and get it into both regional and local consciousness in times other than May, for instance, which is when this town goes nuts, would be an asset, certainly for anybody who has any kind of commerce in this town that depends partially or totally on people coming in. That's just my opinion, but I think it would be a real valuable contribution.
So how about we do the A, B, and the new C with 10 points, but we do it or. Instead of having A, B, and C are graded as 10.
Oh, I see.
A and or B is, you could get 10 points. Does that work? Clear as mud.
Are you going to define somewhere what your shoulder season is? Or are you just going to assume it's going to be the winter season?
We're just going to wing it. Is the shoulder season defined in here?
That would be another definition.
As hotel operators, when is the shoulder season?
From my last experience of 5 years at the Holiday Inn Express, a shoulder season would be November through March, November through February, where March starts to pick up, November starts to slow down.
It's the same thing we see at the museum.
Does that, everybody agree, March to April? Or
No, November to March.
April? Or March? February. November to February.
And put a definition in there.
Yes.
Shoulder season.
Any objections?
No.
November to February. And we're at A and or B as stated with 10 points, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Any other discussion on that one? I think we're back to 5. Did we want to?
Yes.
Did we want to cut that to from 10 points to 5 points?
Yeah.
Any objection? Detailed marketing advertising plan. I think that's pretty fair.
And that gets to what Faye was saying, that's the sort of information that...
Number 7?
One minor comment on number 7. Can we specify that they not include the whole publication?
maybe just tear sheets? Sometimes those packets get a little heavy.
Mayor, I'm a little unclear on B. Did they provide a quality? How do you measure? I mean, I don't understand that question. Did they provide a quality that would represent the town well? I mean, are they going to say, no, we didn't? No, we did a terrible job of advertising.
Well, that's a good question. 'cause
I mean-
I could tell you the comments on the billboards that we just got awards for. I've heard probably 50%, 50%. They're
That's
great.
a very
They're out there
subjective
now.
thing.
So, what's quality?
Right. Maybe it's a different question.
I know this is going to sound obvious, but one of the problems I see in local advertising is often there's critical information listed, like location, phone number, address. If people are going to promote an event, even if they're new, they have to get a little more professional. So perhaps there's some basic criteria as far as giving information that's useful to the reader. I know that sounds a little Mickey Mouse, but frankly, I have seen some advertising done in this town that defeats its own purpose.
It was just recently done on Celebrity Apprentice. They left out all contact information.
Yes. So maybe some minimal overview is important. You know, I don't know. It's just.
Is that what we're doing?
Yes. I would like to just leave it as it is, and we need to judge it based on those features, based on, if it's a picture of a volcano up by Seattle advertising Silver City. I mean, that's not quality for Silver City advertising. Yeah, they need to do their best.
Well, and perhaps it's, some of us do contract with graphic designers to have an actual, nice ad designed, and then maybe versus something that's just, bunch of text that somebody just does on a, on a word processor and sends in as an ad. I mean, maybe there would be a judgment there, I think, as to which is the better ad. I don't know, high quality.
Yeah, and I don't think it's a 5 points or 0 points. I mean, if somebody did the print ad with just plain font advertising, well, maybe they get 2 or 3 points, whatever the evaluator decides. Any other discussion? We only have the room for another 40 minutes, so we got to move. Number 8. Any objections?
No.
Number 9.
None. It's good.
10.
Mayor, going back to that last one, are you still going to ask for that final report?
Yes.
Should that be somewhere where you...
So, add a B, previous awardee.
attach a copy of the final report from previous year's funding.
That's good.
Or just compliance with all previous contracts?
Yeah, that's fine.
Objections?
Yeah, none.
Objections?
To the last one.
Good. 10?
I like that one.
In 10, you state in what specific and quantifiable ways did your marketing advertising benefit Silver City? How are you going to do quantifiable? Well, that's basically what we've been discussing all day long.
I think that goes back to, I think what Sandra was just saying, that that's one of the questions that gets an asterisk by it for events, as well as number 2 is an event question.
Would this be a good place to add what other organizations did you cooperate with in your give points for also cooperating with other organizations.
Any objection to that?
No.
Got that one? Well, 11 is the great place to just put, have you adhered to Lodgers Tax Advisory Board's rules, guidelines, and previous contracts?
Yeah, that probably would be their place to put it.
And I really think we should change the points on that.
Yes. We're kind of behind the points.
Right. I think that's a critical one. And we get, so, I mean, right now we have 5. And if they can't comply with the rules, regs, and contracts, somebody want to give a number? 10?
At least 10.
You're nice.
More.
I think 15, because that would make it an even 100 if I counted up right, if I added it up right. Yeah, I tried to add it up real quick.
So we go to 15?
I think we need, oops, unless I did it wrong. Nope, I just did it wrong. It'd have to be 20. We have 20. Right now we only have 5 there, so I think we have 85 total. So we're missing 15 points if we leave it at 5.
I'm along the lines of Mitch. I mean, 95 is fair.
Yeah, no, 20.
I also think, I mean, failure could just be disqualification.
Well, then make it 20.
How about we just make it failure to comply? Maybe consider reason for an unresponsive proposal.
That sounds good to me. And then you have an 80-point system if you just leave it that way.
Objections?
Yeah, it's 80 points.
Yeah, that's good.
But you have 80 points, but then we go back to the event-specific questions. Like number 2.
Okay.
I mean, if you don't make that an event-specific, you're going to punish Main Street right on the front end.
Right, I know.
They're going to lose 10 points and not have a 10-point deduction from their scale.
Okay. And number 2 is not necessarily event though, driven. Are we talking about number 2 on page 5? Or you?
Yeah.
Okay,
How many
no.
people are anticipated to attend the event?
Or visit the organization or event or.
Main Street, they don't visit the Main Street organization.
No, so we have to change that, visit Silver City.
I don't know if he can quantify that.
No, but he does have a target audience. Do you not?
So he gets 5 points.
Well, it's sort of the same thing. Then take out A. I mean, I don't know how to do this unless you put another question in.
I just think you delete number 2 when you're evaluating non-events or organizations that can't quantify.
Maybe you should delete number 1.
Do what?
Delete number 1.
No, I think number 1's important. I don't think we can delete that.
Delete that.
How about you just add in the front of A, if this is an event, how many people are anticipated to attend?
There you go.
Here,
Is that better?
that'll work. I mean, we can talk about who we target in terms of our advertising, because that's something that's specific. And so I guess if that's what you're talking about, then yeah, I wouldn't have a problem with that, because obviously the publications that we choose in Tucson and El Paso and Las Cruces that we advertise in on a regular basis, we've got a target audience. So yeah, but in terms of the people that downtown attracts, I mean, I think most people that visit Silver City at some point or another wind up going downtown. So
are we good on that one? Proposal review process by advisory board is going to be based, number one's based on what we just did.
Okay.
Conditions governing the procurement. The dates, I think we need to settle on a date that the council, when Alex can get, the earliest you can give us a number in your budget process every year.
A lodger's tax, to be safe, the earliest that I can.
The first week of May or second week of May?
Actually, it would be the second week in April.
The second week in April?
Yep.
So I think as far as the council, the final decision should be made by the second meeting in April.
In terms of?
In terms of the advisory group has done their work and it's come to us.
No, they won't know, yeah. Well, the RFP
Well,
has to be issued.
if it's the second week in April, that gives a pretty narrow window for you guys to have a meeting.
Wait.
Some years.
Second week in April is when the RFP is issued, is what we're talking about? Are we talking
That's
about
when I'll have a
actual
number.
award?
So the RFP
Yeah.
can be issued.
As soon as you know the
when
number.
you're making your decision.
I'm doing this from the other end.
Yeah, I'm getting confused because he said that that's when he knows the number.
I want to know when the earliest is that we can have a number and
The
make an
second
award.
week in April, because that's when I have, I'm the most comfortable with making projections for the next year, as far as lodger's tax are concerned.
So back, all the rest of the schedule that you have in here, back that from the second week in April to come up with those dates.
So you want the contract awarded second week of April?
No.
Okay, or start the RFP process second week of April.
Can't you start the RFP process without the total number?
Yeah, that's
what
why
I'm
he's
saying.
working it back.
I'm saying if we start with second week of April is the first day that you guys could possibly give us a number.
Number 5 is what you're talking about, is that the proposal evaluations or after
Okay.
that?
Right. It's
5, okay.
Number 5 is when the...
from
So
5
that would
back.
be-
Just go from the second week of April.
That would be the second week in May. Give us a month to meet, read the documents. So if people submitted their stuff by the second week in April, that would give us a month to review and come back and give you a recommendation by the second week in May, and then you could make your recommendation within that time frame. Or if even RFPs were submitted first week, beginning of April, we could start evaluating without knowing how much money. I mean, but it takes a while to go through them. It takes a while to get a meeting together. Yeah.
What we keep running up against is
But if we
the
knew
contract
that this
issues.
was going to be our time frame, then it would be easier to get a meeting scheduled. We'd schedule it a couple of months ahead of time. Right now, we always get okay, have your meeting. We're ready.
That's kind of why I'm working from the
Right.
second week of April versus a date, because council meetings change every year.
But there's no reason why the RFPs can't come in before the second week of April. If they all be submitted by whatever that date might be, the second week of April.
The RFP could go out in March. Their evaluation could happen by the second week in April. The award could be the first council meeting in May.
Is that
We
fair?
may need a little more time, but, because we do like to know how much money we're working with.
Well, you could score
By
them.
the- yeah,
You could have them all
we could have them scored,
And then the only
yeah,
thing
we
you
could
have left is to come up with your recommendations on amounts.
Right. Good, that works.
Any objections? And I think we need to stick to that date, that schedule, as consistently as possible every year.
But as for this RFP, by next week, we'll have it out.
Everything else is pretty much recurring. Do we have, one of the other issues came up was do we have like a standardized list of what is reimbursable and what's not?
Because
one provided by the state.
it's general,
Yeah,
unless there are some specific reimbursables, but a lot, the categories are more general.
Mayor, if I may, we had tried to get this into the whole